They talk to their base, and if their base buys it, and they buy the emotions of the president on stage and what is coming out of the mouths, and the bureaucrats love it. They love bureaucratic talk, right? Well, we have to negotiate with the Taliban because of the de facto government. You made them the de facto government. You created a government to talk to. You had a government on the ground. Well, they collapsed. You know why they collapsed? Because in Jalalabad, when 3 weeks ago, bunch of special forces from the Afghan military were fighting, and they were asking for support, and you cut off that support to them, and then you did not allow the Afghan military force to provide that support to them because the aircraft requirements had your people in advisory capacity to them. They fought to the last bullet, and then once they gave up, they got basically massacred on cell phone in front of the entire world. What were you expecting from everybody else in the Afghan military to do?
Time for an NOQ report news update.
NOQ report news update on now with Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army retired Sargis Sangari. And Sargis is on to talk about not only the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, but also about the unfolding situation in Afghanistan. They get a little more background on him. Like I said, he's a U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel. He's retired. He's the CEO currently of the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, as you can see above. And he's founder of the United Syrian Appeal. And he's somebody who's got a lot of combat expertise under his belt. He was involved in 22 Special Forces missions, 144 combat patrols, and combating men during numerous enemy attacks. Sargis was accorded diplomatic status in Kuwait as Director of Host Nation Affairs for the United States. The United Syrian Appeal focuses on assisting the military families of the direct nationals. Is that still current, Sargis? Has that changed at all?
It hasn't. First of all, it's good to be here, Bill. It's been a long time since we had coffee in Peru. But
that's right, man.
Yeah, it's coming up with mischief, as they would say. But
yes, sir.
But no, it hasn't changed. We still have the issues, and actually it's going to get worse because of what's happening in Afghanistan. We realized 2 days after Afghanistan fell into the chaos it is, we got the word that ISIS was manifesting on the ground in northern Iraq again. Just yesterday, after the bombings, the Iraqi special forces are poured all over Baghdad right now, ensuring that the government doesn't collapse if there's attacks there. And we're believing that there might be operations, if not this year by ISIS, for the establishment of the caliphate again in northern Iraq and Syria. You might actually see them starting sometime next spring. So we're still asking for support and donations to have money and the coffers ready to go through the process of trying to support all these certain Christians and the root of Christianity, as it's going to face, I would say, probably the final eradication of those certain Christians.
Tragic. This is, let me tell you, well, no, God forbid. I think there's hope. Let me just say that the Assyrians, lest anybody wonder who they are, remember Nineveh, remember the Bible, remember Jonah. These were among the first Christians. They speak Aramaic, the language of Jesus. It's an incredible story. In one town in Iraq, they have the custody of the tomb of the prophet Nahum, and it's an amazing people, an amazing story. And the United Syrian Appeal was founded to help these Christians, to help these Christians that really are among the first Christians, the first believers of the message of Jesus Christ. So we have to keep them in our prayers, but also, take out your debit cards and help them. All right. Now,
look, I didn't want to interrupt on this one, but
it's okay.
The Assyrians actually, before everybody else knew Jesus, the Assyrians under Jonah had already accepted the message that Christ was going to preach anyway. So they were actually way ahead of the curve, and unfortunately, they're going to be under stress again this time.
That's exactly correct. They're in Iraq and in Syria, in the Khabur Valley and other places. But looking at Afghanistan, Sargis, you've dealt with combat, you've dealt with complex issues dealing with different ethnicities, and also unfolding situations that, let's say, get out of our own hands. What can we do right now, in your opinion, to be able to stabilize the situation, to increase our footprint on the ground from what's basically, it looks like the Kabul airport in Afghanistan? What can we do? What would you, if you had 48 hours, carte blanche, Sargis Sangari, what would you do, Lieutenant Colonel?
Well, I have to tell you that Afghanistan not going to be stable. I mean, people talk about once we leave, it's going to be breaking out into a civil war with a weak central government. It's going to implode on itself. I mean, when you have the UN saying that you get 8,000 foreign fighters in the region, it's not working well. I mean, Iran is giving oil, which they started 4 days ago, giving oil to the Taliban. That oil is actually coming from northern Iraq, believe it or not. The Kurdish drivers are driving it on behest of the Iranians through Iran. And, when that truck driver is driving his vehicle, he's spending money and he's improving the economy of Iran, bringing the oil into the Taliban. At the same time, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is led by China and Iran as a signatory to, is also working with Tajikistan, which has the lead for the presidency of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in their 20th Jubilee year here now. And they're actually giving weapon supplies to the Northern Alliance because the U.S. is not giving any support to the Northern Alliance, as we're giving a list of Americans and others to the Taliban, which is a organization, a terror organization that wants us out. So NATO is leaving, SCO is walking in. The way I would do it, I would make sure I get all Americans out. If that means you extend the timeline, so be it. I know we've been working hard. Me and you have spoken about trying to get people out of there. Last night, a friend of mine was trying to get 30 personnel out. They came around the corner, ran into a Taliban, ended up having to truck all their paperwork in a well because they did not want to be caught by the Taliban. People in the State Department will tell you, no, we've given a list of individuals that the Taliban are going to ensure pass through. But the list that the State Department has doesn't match the list that the small entities that work for the State Department have on the ground. So if Taliban comes up there and looks at the State Department list and doesn't match the person who's there, even if they have the paperwork from the U.S., they're going to kill them. Now you have individuals on the ground that had to get rid of their documents because they were afraid of being killed, and they can't even prove that they actually have worked with the U.S. force structures. We're going to end up allowing a lot of people to die. And for those who don't understand Afghanistan, and I worked on the Special Skills Initiative, bringing State Department and Department of Defense. That was my mission set to do that in order to be able to infuse the two capabilities together for a better understanding of how to approach Afghanistan going back to 2010. I ended up getting pulled for a diplomatic mission, wasn't able to go downrange with my mission set of what I had created. However, with that said, try to climb those hills if you have never climbed a hill, first of all, and try to do it, negotiate through tribal territory where if you don't have cash in your hand to what we call blood money, you're going to get killed. And then now imagine if you're a woman and you're trying to negotiate through there. And by the way, we gave weapon systems to the Taliban, and in short order, the Taliban is already trying to find individuals who could operate those systems. And if you give them the helos and do not destroy them on the ground, those 200 aircrafts, and they're going to start using them to hunt down our folks, give them air superiority, end up killing these poor Americans are going to try to make it to some foreign country and have to pay out of pocket just to get back to the United States. And I would not be surprised as incompetent as our State Department capabilities are. They probably won't allow them to come in and say you have to go under quarantine for 14 days because you might have contracted COVID, regardless of the fact that you have to go through these minefields.
Lieutenant Colonel Sangari, maybe if we direct them through Mexico, they can come in as illegal aliens, the American citizens that and our translators. Bill, they don't get quarantined. They don't get quarantined. Do they?
Look, listen, no, they don't. And you know what? I know, it comes across as funny in that capacity. But look, the people who rushed the aircraft and rushed into that aircraft and flew in, a lot of them were not SIVs. There are people who wanted to get out of there. Now, I don't blame them. that they want to get out of Afghanistan, but we're probably going to take those people. We're going to probably keep them. We're not going to send them back, and they'll be permanently on welfare for the rest of their lives while they're here. But the person who went through the process, the Afghan individual who supported Americans, who went through the process of earning that SIV, were leaving him behind to be killed by the Taliban. And, you know, the fact that we are funneling money to the Taliban now, and we had said it on the Near East, that that's what basically what we're doing, giving money to the Taliban. You have individuals, as an example, a clerk who's sitting there and looking at the paperwork for as an interpreter to make sure the paperwork of monitoring how that money is moving is correct. That clerk has an SIV badge, and that clerk is going to be left behind. So he's literally auditing the paperwork for the money trail that is going to the Taliban, that's going to be used to empower the Taliban to find him and kill him. I mean, this.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
I don't care what your understand. I don't care that you have created this concept of how you need to negotiate with Taliban because you made them the de facto government now. You need to get out of that mindset. You need to bring people who are not bureaucrats and say, this is not going to work. I don't care what your rules and regulations are. That person is going to leave. I'm not going to funnel money into the pockets of these terrorists.
Let me ask you a question. Please explain to our audience what SIV is.
Those are special immigration visas. And these SIVs, special immigration visas, were applied for. We had almost 80,000 in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, State Department is now blaming them and other Americans as to you knew we were going to leave. Why didn't you leave? Because State Department, there was a deadline on the books, and you were still issuing visas to Afghanistan. If you went to the embassy in Kabul website, State Department would say, do not travel to Afghanistan because of COVID. Just like they said, we recommend you don't travel to Italy because of COVID. So if you're going to compare Afghanistan and Italy together in the same mention, and you're not going to say, and you're still issuing visas past the deadline you were supposed to be here, what do you expect the person on the ground to make a rational decision on? Well, obviously, if they're giving visas for Americans to still come to this country, that means they're going to extend the deadline. They're not going to have an issue. And the fact that you did not actually set up any mechanism to include a simple 5-page memorandum with other countries to say, take this much number of individuals that have to be in a small holding status, maybe in a temporary refugee status in your country until we can process them. You did not have any of those mechanisms in place. What were you expecting to happen?
So, okay, let me bring it down really, really close. Okay. Sargis thinks strategically. And right now we're in a situation where basically our footprint is the airport at Kabul. What could we do to try to, not to, let's say stabilize, but we have to start, going in there. We can't just turn our back on these people. They're going to be attacking and shooting down our planes with our soldiers and Marines and special forces on them. What can we do so that we can at least establish some control and extend our footprint so we can try to get these Americans out? There are Americans there, as well as our friends.
Bill, you're talking about the systems. Right now, there's no American on the ground, to include the SRE, who trusts the American government. Our own American citizens on the ground don't trust the government. They're in survival mode. They have to survive, okay? They
don't trust the U.S. government?
No, they don't trust the U.S. government. How are you going to trust the U.S. government if the U.S. government has put you in this position and you don't know if tomorrow they're going to turn around and leave and now you're stuck out there and they're blaming you? They already started the blame game. Well, you never registered. You shouldn't have been there. They got their folks walking out and having these discussions.
Ridiculous.
You have people in the press who are writing these things, to include the reporter in New Yorker. I mean, it is not these people's faults. When you have an interpreter who's an SIV, special immigration visa, and he's working till last second, you have folks that are SIVs who are giving or translators right now for the Department of Defense on the ground and some Department of State assets. Those people that are doing that could be left behind. Their families could be left behind. So literally, you do the final translation, and American's going to sit on a bird, take off, and you're out there wondering what the hell happened to you. I mean, this is the level of stupid
Right.
it is. It's survival. So frankly, you want to be honest. You know what you do right now? You survive. That's it. Because there's no governmental system from the State Department of Defense that is doing anything. Look, when the head of the Central Intelligence Agency meets with the Taliban and the Taliban kills Americans a few days later, that's from the Middle Eastern perspective, spit in your face. And if you're that feckless, and if I hear that, well, we're going to do clandestine operations to go out there, but just shut up. The fact that they spit in your face 2 days afterwards means that they have no respect for you. That has to register in your head. Your institutions are broken.
So Sargis, how do we deal with it? I mean, look, how do we approach the situation? So we have to do something. We have to use some kinetics, okay?
Listen, it's not going to happen. Listen to me. It's not going to happen under this administration. The only thing you have as a voter back here, you got to vote these people out in 2022. That's all they care about. It's all about optics. These individuals do not care. The messaging is it fell apart. It shouldn't have happened. They're already talking about, remove it. It's going to be the largest group of individuals if we pulled out of the country. That's it. They talk to their base. And if their base buys it, and they buy the emotions of the president on stage and what is coming out of the mouths, and the bureaucrats love it. They love bureaucratic talk, right? Well, we have to negotiate with the Taliban because it's the de facto government. You made them the de facto government. You created a government to talk to. You had a government on the ground. Well, they collapsed. You know why they collapsed? Because in Jalalabad, when 3 weeks ago, bunch of special forces from the Afghan military were fighting and they were asking for support, and you cut off that support to them, and then you did not allow the Afghan military force to provide that support to them because the aircraft requirements had your people in advisory capacity to them. They fought to the last bullet, and then once they gave up, they got basically massacred on cell phone in front of the entire world. What were you expecting from everybody else in the Afghan military to do? Especially the fighters in their country. We expect them to fight and die knowing that they weren't going to get any more bullets and resupplied, or go try to save their families wherever they are throughout the entire country. I mean, look, our institutions have taken a major hit. And it's unfortunate that on the 28th Jubilee of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which was created to counter NATO, NATO is running away from the region.
Sorry,
Americans are working with the Taliban.
Okay, slowly say, what is that organization that was created?
It's a Shanghai Cooperation Organization that was created by China to counter NATO, to expand China's ability to fight against what it thought would be the Western elements as it expanded its footprint in Africa, throughout the Middle East, as it's doing today, and now within the regions of Southwest Asia and the rest of the Near East.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, you've heard the news. I think you mentioned it that, the bundles of cash, pallets of cash being sent to the Taliban. That it's just unbelievable. Sargis, is there anybody in the Pentagon that has enough testicular fortitude to pound on the table in the White House and say, we've got to do the following things, Mr. President, and push him to authorize the right moves, the right decision? We have to turn it around. We can't just let this become a total utter rout. We can't let this become First Manassas. When everybody in the Union Army is just retreating back to Washington with the stagecoaches and the carriages with people and the women in their ball skirts and their good Lord.
Oh, listen,
there must be something that can be done.
The politician only cares about how he looks at the end of the day. There's been a calculation made by the people who are actually handling the president of the United States, the same people who select who he talks to in the press media and what he says, who write his speeches. The communication staff, all they care about is making sure that his echo chamber stays with him. So the card-carrying lemmings that work for that particular organization, in this case, the Democratic Party, walk in and vote for him and his people in 2022, and their hope is in 2024. They made the calculation that nobody blames Nixon for the fall of Saigon. American voter, majority of them who are tied to their political party, even if it means that they burn the United States into the ground, are still going to walk in and still going to vote for this individual and his folks, regardless in 2022, 2024. And their hope and desire is that nobody's going to remember Afghanistan from the American perspective in a few years. That's what they're hoping for.
Now, I look upon this in so many levels. It constitutes a defeat of NATO, a defeat of the United States as the leader, that the player that always it brings about creates consensus and has the force to do so, and to line up people behind it like we did with George H.W. Bush in the Gulf War in 1991 when he brought together this incredible coalition, an incredible diplomatic achievement. And we no longer have credibility. And what can we do? What can we do now in Southeast Asia with Taiwan? It's gone.
Listen, what are you going to do? Look, if Taiwan takes over, when you have Japan looking at possibly, because they have the elections coming up this January, when they're looking at Article 9 and talk about we have to get rid of Article 9 because they don't trust the United States. Look, Vice President Harris is flying into Vietnam, and she had made the declaration that we're going to support with so many vaccines for Vietnam, which is dealing with COVID, and all those vaccines are going to get there before I show up on the scene. Well, part of the reason her plane was delayed wasn't because there was this so-called mysterious sickness, because the vaccines hadn't gotten there. So in order to keep her word that they would have gotten there before her, there was a delay, and it was, put on this claim that it was a vaccine issue. Trying to figure it out, they went in and gave 3 times more of those vaccines to the Vietnamese than U.S. was bringing in. Now, the vaccine was supposed to be used as a leverage. That's what was being used with other nations. When you are Vietnam and you're looking at the fact that you fought against America and they lost, they left Saigon. It wasn't the soldiers that lost it. It was a politician that lost it because, again, they cut the funding in support of the South Vietnamese
and the weapons.
And the weapons. So now you have a vice president who's flying there, can't even have her bureaucratic system to get the simple vaccines to Vietnam, and you're looking at the debacle in Kabul, and now China comes in and says, here's all the vaccines you need. Who are you going to work with? The Americans or the Chinese?
Exactly.
It doesn't take a brain. You don't need to be a diplomatic genius to figure this out. This is at the hands of the diplomat. The diplomat doesn't understand how to function out of the regulations he created for himself, which more importantly, Congress created for him. Let's not blame the diplomat, the bureaucrat created for him. He doesn't know how to function. He doesn't know how to function outside of that. Unfortunately, the previous POTUS came in and said, you know what, I don't have time for this level of stupid. We're going to do it this way. And the bureaucrat wasn't happy. Now look at it. Well, we're doing it the way the bureaucrat wants. Look what's happening. But bureaucrat language is very simple. Well, we have to work with the Taliban. They're the de facto government right now. The previous government collapsed. Right? Take some responsibility for the level of stupid that led us here. Don't point the finger at everybody else. Don't point the finger at everybody else. Every now and then, how about getting rid of people within the Department of Defense, Department of State? How about resigning? How about going in and saying, here's a resignation paperwork.
Let's see some of the people that we have in our illustrious Pentagon. General Mark Milley, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Should he just resign, take his pension, and walk away?
Well, that's a decision he has to make. But I can tell you right now, there's a lot of people at lower levels, even at state, who have already put their paperwork in and said, once this debacle is gone, we're leaving. Because once we leave and Americans are stuck behind enemy lines and they're getting killed, these people don't want to be part of it. I hope there's some senior leaders who will do that. The problem is we are not organized to understand how to put pressure. The administration cares only about optics. Politician only cares about how he looks. Politician only cares about the number of people who are going to vote for him in the next election. They don't care about anything else. If they say we do, look, Jack Diamond was a famous poker player of our vintage. And one thing that you learn from a guy like him who's successful is that don't listen what the man is telling you. Look at what that person's doing. Look at what he's doing, how he's playing the cards. And right now, I will tell you that the person that we are talking to or standing on stage, he's delivering his lines like he's been told to deliver. But what is he doing on the ground? He is going to leave. He's about to leave Americans on the ground who are going to be probably killed at the hand of the Taliban.
American
He's going to give
citizens.
money to the Taliban to get him out of there. If the whole issue was we're spending too much money and treasure in the Middle East, especially in Afghanistan, why did you allow all those weapon systems to fall in the hands of the Taliban? And why are you turning around and not giving them to money? They're not asking for millions, Bill. They're asking for billions. Billions. They're going to suck 87 billion probably out of you.
No, but that's just Sargis. That's just the start of it. Here's the nightmare scenario unfolding in Kabul airport. You know, what's to stop the Taliban or ISIS-K and Al-Qaeda and independent rogue jihadists from, grabbing RPGs, grabbing a 20 millimeter cannon and shooting at a C-5A Galaxy with 800 people on board and shooting it down?
Bill, what RPGs? We left shorter fire missiles on the ground. We left biometrics. I mean,
much bigger stuff.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, you got folks going out there and killing folks, but unfortunately, they're going out there and buying back their own equipment. Isn't that sad? You got folks going out there buying back the same equipment that you left on the ground. I mean, then the reasonable person has to ask, and it really is a reasonable question: did we do this on purpose, or do we did this because we're so incompetent? If you're incompetent, fire people who allowed this to happen. But if you're not going to fire people, ain't nobody from state and Department of Defense going to get fired. These people are going to claim success. They're going to get their OERs, officer, evaluation reports, or whatever else they give in the State Department. They're going to move on. They're going to write a book. They're going to be on, at major universities, even here in Chicago, at the University of Chicago, and they're going to speak about, this is the lessons learned as far as what we found out happened. And they're going to become people in think tanks who are going to sit there and recommend policy. It's a joke. It's a joke. That's why you're losing to China.
Right. So, Sargis, is it one thing I see as an opening, a glimmer of hope here is that you're starting to see CNN and people in, MSNBC or the traditionally pro-Biden, pro-Democrat Party media saying, hey, we got a big problem here, man. We have to act. We need leadership. They're basically coming out and saying it. And it's not just one guy at Fox News in the White House press room. So a lot of people are saying this is a debacle and we have to do something. That being the case, if there are people in the Pentagon who say, you know something? I knew guys who got killed. I'm ready to go down on my sword and give a middle finger to this president and people in the Joint Chiefs, unless they start to listen to some commonsensical thinking to be able to start carrying out operations, to be able to try to make it easier to get these Americans. Try, for example, to give the Taliban less advantage by destroying Hellfire missiles. We just need to destroy our stuff on the ground. What do we do when we left Abbottabad when we killed Osama bin Laden? We had a damaged helicopter. We demolished it, right? We tried to. Why can't we do the same? What the hell's the problem? Isn't anybody capable of saying, look, we'll send up a couple of B-52s and drop some Moabs and just let them know that we're still in charge, or we're still capable of doing huge damage?
Look, I have said this before. These Islamists can get funding from anybody. When we were fighting against ISIS in Iraq and Syria, the Syrian Christians, for their survival, we realized that everybody has an ISIS. The Saudis had an ISIS, other countries had an ISIS, the Turks had an ISIS, and they were using it for their advantage. Now, if you had thought, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not beating the Chinese. They're building the Belt and Road Initiative. I need to be able to be out of here and let China sacrifice and spill blood. Maybe I could reset their plan for possible global domination by another decade. Okay, so you give money to the Taliban. If you're going to give it to Taliban, other Islamists that were going to kill Chinese businessmen all the way from Mongolia, mainland China, all the way through the Belt and Road Initiative and into Pakistan, okay, I could tell you, go ahead and execute that plan. But the reality is that our systems and our major capabilities are not that able. They cannot do that. They don't think that way. So if they're not going to think that way and they're not going to use that capability, then guess what? You're not trading the Chinese. The Chinese have a $60 billion plan with Pakistan. That was the main reason why Taliban existed. And, in one end, Iran is giving him money, advising him on the ground. Other end, you have taken major weapon systems that we had, gave it to the Chinese. It's not that the military complex is not sad about it. They're already up in DC talking about here's how we could defeat our own weapon systems with a new design of a plan.
Unbelievable.
Give me some money for me to be able to do it. At the same time, though, they're supporting like I said, the Northern Alliance. So they're playing both sides. They're going to do some infrastructure builds. The Chinese are different. If you violate what they have an agreement on, you're going to die. Okay. And I hope and I wish that we had a better understanding of how to use our force projections. Blinken, just 2 days ago on the 26th, or it was yesterday, I believe, he said that we're going to use military and economic power to get the Americans out, meaning we're going to pay for our money. So you're going to launder money to the Taliban. We're going to end up having to take American taxpayer dollars and still give it to whoever now you have made the de facto government in Afghanistan. But like I said, I don't think there's going to be a civil war in Afghanistan. I truly believe it's going to get to a point it's going to be so bad it's going to implode on itself. That means now Pakistan is in jeopardy. That means now you may have to see a larger regional war between India and Pakistan over Kashmir, because Kashmir is the main source of water for both these nations. They're not fighting over it because they care about the people in Kashmir. They're fighting over it because it's a source of water for both nations. And if Pakistan controls those, they'll shut off the water to India. If India controls it, Pakistan doesn't have any source of water to feed itself. This is what ends up happening when you get individuals who try to play in areas with toys that could burn both ways. An Islamic radical doesn't care who you are. You're a signature to him, a heat signature. And in 1 second, he could suddenly react and kill you. He'll take your money, but the second you turn your back on him, he's going to stab you. He comes from a criminal network organization called the Haqqani Network. Years ago, when they stopped the production of opium, the Americans were like, oh, look, the Taliban's stopping the production of opium. People were writing books about how we could convert their main crop to something else. And then a year and a half later, they started it again. And Americans were saying, oh, you know what? The smart guys out there with what we used to call an army piled higher and deeper, PhDs, that the reason it happened because their conditions on the ground were not conducive to be able to develop a new agriculture farm. No, they did it because the price of heroin started falling, and they stopped the production to spike up the price of heroin so they could sell it again for a higher price. I mean, wow. The level of stupid that exists in academia is beyond recognition sometimes.
Hey, listen, on that score, I could do another interview, but, the Northern Alliance, this was a group in Afghanistan in 2001 that we started betting on, right? So you're saying did you say they're a terrorist organization?
No, the Northern Alliance is not, but eventually, who knows what will happen in the region. They are a separate entity. China is playing both the Northern Alliance now against the Taliban, supporting both sides without even having his finger on the ground, is using others for it.
How much control do they have?
I have no clue what's left of them right now. They're trying to fight, but U.S. is not interested in supporting them.
Amazing. So I guess we have to just reconcile ourselves to utter total debacle.
Look,
right?
I shouldn't say that. If the U.S. is supporting him, it is not doing it in the open, but I know who's doing it in the open. It's called the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which means that they're winning the IO campaign.
Unbelievable. So, Sargis Sangari, the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, the CEO, founder, and also he's the founder of United Assyrian Appeal.org, correct? So they can go to that website, Sargis?
Yeah, they could go just to our Square account and support us under our Square account. So if it comes up again, we're starting to again collect money now for coffers because unfortunately we have to get prepared for a possibility of what may happen to our community come next spring. We're hoping it doesn't, but hope is on our course of action. As I say, you got to prepare and try your best to educate the people up on the hill. Unfortunately,
Right.
they only care about running re-elections right now
Right.
and staying in office. Nobody cares about what is happening to even our American citizens who are left behind lines and possibly are going to be killed because we abandoned them on the
It's
battle.
unthinkable. It's unthinkable. So, all right, again, United Assyrian Appeal.org, go to it and go to the, you said the Square account, right? There's a place to donate.
Correct.
And somehow there's got to be people in our military or our forces who take it into their own hands. That's the only thing I see. They have to take things into their own hands. Those Americans.
100+ years ago, congressmen used to get into fights. You actually use sticks to beat up each other. Hamilton died because he actually, picked up arms and was in a
There's in a duel.
in a duel.
They're in Burr.
We went past that. We started establishing parameters of having much more of a broader way of communicating our issues. So in our democracy, you wouldn't just get up and say, "The heck with it. I don't like what you're saying. I'm gonna, topple the government." Now, the problem is you have put the people in a position where if they have no choice, it's going to be worse than what used to be 100 years ago in Congress. Unfortunately, Bill, the only mechanism we have is a two-party system. I don't like it. I don't think it functions well, especially the way it is controlled right now with a small number of representatives. If they had just opened up the numbers of representatives that you could still have, you would have much more broader number of representatives for the population we have in the U.S. and would limit the ability of these superstar reps, like the individuals who are in the charge of the House and also in charge on both sides of the aisle. So that hasn't happened. It would be nice if they lift the Congress put that actually ban on how many numbers they could have for representatives. They did it because they wanted to have superstars like they have today. Until we could unravel this thing, the only option we have is our vote. As much as it's difficult, as much as there's corruption and voter fraud that takes place, you got to go in and vote, and you got to run for office. I have begged my fellow veterans on both sides of the aisle, you got to run. We need to put people who understand that leaving an American on a battlefield in the hands of a terrorist that is pulling wives out, raping them in front of their husbands, killing the wife, then killing the husband because they work with Americans is not American. And it's sad that I have to say that. And the fact that that doesn't even drive passion in some of our American policymakers, and it doesn't drive passion in Americans, maybe it is time for America to kind of step back and realize, are we really the moral leaders of the globe? And if it's all about money, it's all about businesses, it's all about striking business requirements, then, the Chinese are doing a pretty good job of it in controlling our manufacturing anyway. The last thing I would say, Bill, is that, look, we have to internally fix our problems. Socialism is what? Giving people enough to keep them fat, dumb, and happy so they don't, get up and one day say we're sick of the politician. Americans now are sick of what the politician is doing to the ideal of America. And if you on both sides of the aisle are tired of what the politician is doing to the ideal of America, destroying this beacon of hope, then understand one thing. As I stood on stage 5 years ago to this November, delivered a speech in a synagogue in Canada as to why even the Christian churches were not fighting to save the roots of Christianity in Iraq, is because they haven't felt evil, they haven't seen it, they haven't touched it, it hasn't been real for them. We have to fight evil wherever it manifests itself, whether it be in the halls of Congress or it is in Afghanistan. If you don't, you will destroy this ideal of what America was founded on.
Okay, Sargis Sangari, Lieutenant Colonel, retired U.S. Army. Thank you so much for being on the Nagpur News Update. Godspeed to you. Hoping to have you on again.
Thank you, Bill. God bless.
God bless you. Bye-bye.